Good morning, listeners. Today is August 29th, Tuesday, and you're listening to the Daily AI Show live on all channels, including TikTok. No, not TikTok yet. We're getting to TikTok next. YouTube, LinkedIn, and Spotify. So welcome today. Today's topic is quite interesting, I suspect. Administration. It's a broad category. And we want to talk about how AI is simplifying office administration. Now, versus define, what is office administration in everybody's? What's the first go-to you think of, Beth or Jumi or whoever? When you think of office administration, what's the first go-to you think?
HR.
HR. Okay.
Wow.
What do you think of, Beth?
Yeah.
I think of documentation, both writing it and making sure that it is being written, right?
Oh,
or
gosh,
captured
I'm
in some
way off
kind of way.
base. Okay. I'm going to tell you before I get to the other three guys, I'm going to tell you my first go-to is Dolly Parton for some reason in 95. I don't know why. That's my first go-to. It's my wife's favorite movie. So we watch it more than I would care to admit, at least once a month, it seems.
Well, just think about if you're going to use the entertainment world as an example of what administration is, then just think of The Office.
Yeah.
That's The Office, and then it's just all about wandering around and chatting with your workers. And how is AI going to help us with that? That's the big question.
Oh, Michael Scott. Okay.
AI is going to be doing the function while you're actually
There you go. While
wandering.
you're drinking coffee.
Here, I'm going to jump in and I'm going to give you the tour of administrative services within the corporation here. I'm going to show my screen.
The expert on this. Most of us aren't.
Let me know if you can see that yet. So this is the world of administration.
Yes.
Does include HR for sure. These are all the other functions that are required to operate a business that are kind of in general the behind the scenes thing, right? So there's the front office, marketing, sales, operations, supply chain, all that stuff, and then there's behind the scenes, and this is business administration. So how's AI hitting these? Let's just run really quickly through these 6 that you see here. And I'll start with information technology. And this is an obvious place where AI is really making a big difference. But this is a specific type of technology. This is the stuff that is supplied to the users or the workers in the building, so to speak, or around the world. So supplying computers, laptops, desktops, etc., network infrastructure, internal user support, so on. By the way, just speaking of AI, I'm here in Google Slides, and you see this little button up here, help me visualize. Well, this is an insertion of AI into the Microsoft stack of tools that you use. So I use those to show these very cool things. I just said futuristic wearable computers, and gave me those images to throw in here.
So right on the forehead.
And Andy, you said you're in Google's, and then you, I think, misspoke and said this was an example of Microsoft, which may also be doing this, but that's a Google add-in.
This was added in Google.
Yeah. Cool.
Right. Yeah. Did I say Microsoft? So I'm actually this is a docs.google.com presentation. Yep. And over here, you see this little help me visualize from Google Labs, let you insert into that something. Okay. So if I misspoke about PowerPoint, I'm sorry. Thank you. Okay. So let's just take one quick example of what's going on with IT. Here's, if you see this little announcement, Atera increases efficiency in IT management 5-fold with Azure OpenAI service. So this company, Atera, which is a platform for doing IT inside a corporation, is working with Azure OpenAI. And basically what they've done is they've provided a chat bot that will actually do work on your computer systems in response to queries from individual users. This saves the internal customer support for IT a little bit of time and trouble. So that's an example of incorporation of AI into IT.
Let's go on. Can I jump in there for 10 seconds?
Please do. Go ahead.
So I come from an IT background, and I never even thought of that before. That could be the help desk of the future. Yes, just that thing alone, where you've got users saying, why does my computer not work, or why is Windows not loading? And you could use AI to probably answer and help with a lot of that stuff. So that's a really interesting development.
Yeah, it's reinstall the system software.
Like being able to add a new tier. So instead of just tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 help desk, you could add in your initial chat tier of help desk to answer 90% of IT questions. I too come from an IT background, so yeah, from in the trenches.
I'm going back to that slide. Then you guys, let's go nuts here. Tell us about it. But that's exactly right. There's a lot of sort of AI-driven, more action-oriented service in the IT infrastructure world. So that the AI will actually fix things, not just provide responses about how you can fix things. So that's very cool.
Yeah.
Okay, in business process management, I want to show you a tool out here that is called this is app.checklist.gg. Say goodbye to manual checklist creation and generate large volumes of checklists in seconds with AI. If I click new checklist, I can create from a prompt, from a document, from URL. So in business process management, you're talking about workflows and documenting them, diagramming them. You can start with a checklist and then create an information flow diagram, a transaction flow diagram. Those are all being assisted by AI. And this one, checklist.gg, it offers to create a much easier approach to doing that whole evaluation and optimization of business processes. Cool. Okay, back to HR.
Yeah.
So we actually here at the Daily AI Show, we invented a really important concept here yesterday, which was in using video. Let the major domo, CEO and or major facing representative of the company do all of the onboarding in any language around the world, using videos that are automatically translated by AI and actually accomplish lip syncing. So look for that being one of the startups that emerges from the Daily AI Show. Okay, but these other functions of AI are obviously getting, that's kind of a training related one. Employee relations, you can imagine that you might be more comfortable than reporting to the HR person. You might feel more comfortable, putting a question or a complaint into an AI assistant.
That's an interesting one.
So that's an idea. I'm not sure how payroll is going to be assisted by AI. I hope I get more of that. Payroll coming.
Well, payroll could all be automated, but I want to go back. This is not necessarily a pushback. It's just an observation with regard to HR. It kind of makes me think about the insurance game, and using AI to deny claims, which somebody got in trouble recently about that. If you've heard the class action suit, but I think of HR and I think of AI being involved in something that there's liability involved. Like you don't want to have a decision informed or made by artificial intelligence that could present the company in a state where they can be sued or liable, right? Yeah. So a lot of times AI was being used in insurance to help set rates, and that could be, depending on where that data was trained, you could be in big trouble because there's race, there's gender, there's different factors that it pulled in to make that a factor, and all of a sudden now you're doing something illegally. So yeah, I guess when it comes to HR and using it for recruitment specifically, right? Mm-hmm. You can see how that can be messed up if it's making decisions or informing decisions.
But you can also think about not just recruitment, but also tracking employee performance, and depending on what industry that is too, right? So I'm sure how can we track employee performance, use AI to do it, and then, this employee isn't performing well, guess what? We'll let you go. And then that's a big, I'm sure that'll happen in the next 3 years in some form or another. We'll hear a story about that.
Yeah, so
I'm
big
gonna
HR systems like Bamboo and others already have a lot of those features built into them, but they were programmatic, not AI driven.
Right.
And I think the real trend here is that most of these big providers to enterprise and to companies are going to incorporate AR. At the bare minimum, they're going to have conversational AI interface chatbots to gain access to, if I have a question about my benefits, for example, instead of having to look through documentation and search through documentation, I can just ask the question. Go ahead, Beth.
Well, and not just benefits. Like if we take what we're talking about, if we take the ability that we're talking about, if we have the ability to track somebody's performance, we also have the ability to interface with helpful suggestions. So one of the things that Salesforce has as a manual process is creating like a sales timeline that you can see like how things are moving through, and there's a section where you can put like best practices are these sorts of things, and you can automate so a new task goes on your list if this is considered a hot lead and there has not been a communication recommended within a certain time period, right? Like all of those are things that you can set. Well, all of those things are now going to be things that you can not only automate that, but automate kind of a chatbot kind of thing. Like I'm thinking Khan Academy just came out with like Khanmigo. You can learn anything with a buddy, right? And the buddy is communicating with you in the way that you like to be communicated with. Carl, like what if you have like this, you have information, you have strategies about how people are successful in your particular business. Now, sure, you track them, but you also in the tracking have like this, but like onboarding buddy. Like here you go. And the onboarding buddy could even be segmented, so Robert, so that like okay, if you ask me this question, I can I'm speaking as the chatbot now, sorry. If you ask these series of questions, those get answered within the wisdom of our community based on our documentation. And if you ask these series of questions, the answer is that's a great thing to bring up with your manager or your sales lead or something like that, so that you can start to help shape what makes really great employees really great employees.
It's an interesting one, Beth. It reminds me of a phrase in the marketing world that a lot of people may be aware of, and that is what you can't measure, you can't improve. And so, yeah, you could have AI tools monitoring people. I mean, there's already stuff out there that does that now, but it could be the alternative is monitoring them, finding out where they're deviating from best practice and helping them get better at the areas where maybe they don't have the training or maybe they don't have the understanding of how to do something right. And so it could actually be like a coach, I guess. I think that's kind of what you were trying to say, Beth. So I think that's a really interesting development if that comes out, and I'm sure it will.
I got a little bit of a pushback on that. So
no, that's not your job.
I know. I'm sorry. What should I call it? Counter riposte. No, I don't know.
Well, pushback.
Okay, so we've been talking about how AI so far, specifically in HR, whether it be the minefield that recruitment might be, or like Beth, you were just talking about having that AI buddy or whatnot to help develop an employee. But don't you think that this might be an issue of socialization, right? So each layer that we're putting in here that separates, like, oh, here you can have your AI buddy do this. Oh, your AI buddy you can talk to about that. Doesn't that break down the interactivity of your team? Because then you're clearly siloing employees from management, or you're siloing employees from each other. So I'm just wondering if there's an issue with separating the human quotient there for this particular kind of thing. Now, I totally see the benefits of using these tools to empower any level or any employee into their growth and things like that. But I think we got to be careful on just keeping more and more separation between everybody.
Right.
If I'm explaining myself correctly.
And I'm going to jump in. Anybody else can jump in too. But I think I've said this before on the show. If your intent is to do something badly, you can use AI to do something badly, right? Like I think it's something to be aware of. The point is not to make sure that people don't talk to each other anymore. The point is to make sure that people talk to each other about the things that are important, right?
I'll say one way to ameliorate that would be as part of the response that the AI could offer up. Here's a list of people in the organization who are at their desks right now, who are well versed in this subject, right? And so that might even prompt interaction, but better informed interaction because you've already kind of gotten some context from the AI.
Well, here's an example. Here's an example that we're talking, like one example where you could either have a human or a bot. So, for example, if you're a taxi company and your driver needs, I don't know, information on how to do a specific thing, they can either radio into dispatch, they can look up in some sort of manual, or they can go through a chatbot and it's like, hey, I want to do this. And when I was talking to I don't know if it's an owner or whatever of a company, they're like, yeah, this would help on these specific things. And I remember he said, we don't want them to do this because we want them to still do dispatch, but this set of questions, yeah, we don't want anybody because it's the most waste of our time to answer them. And those are mostly new drivers. So this is where we want to deploy this. And so I think there's like a balance of what can't, especially ones that are repetitive, like do you really want to keep having people answer those same things? I think that's where you can definitely integrate AI to relieve people of not having to do that.
That's training and onboarding 101. Yeah, that's a great use case, is using AI to do these things that are repetitive and just really onboarding and training that is black and white, right? I think what Jimmy and Beth were talking about is more of the gray area relational issues that come up that might need delicate hands that AI could make worse because you might take a person down a path and not be able to control that path, and now you're liable. So that's, I think
the minute you use the word delicate, like maybe AI is not your first go-to.
Well, could you just imagine like someone using character AI to be that business liaison, like trained a character AI like business?
I like Snoop Dogg as my HR specialist. That'd be awesome. Well, I mean Pi.ai, what is it? Whatever Pi, from Integrity, whatever. That's pretty impressive for. I mean, I wouldn't advocate for it as an HR manager. And let's be clear, the purpose of HR, they don't work for employees. They work for the company. But
good. Let's move on now quickly. We've got a couple more areas to discuss. One is finance and accounting. And this is an area where, the AI's ability to ingest enormous quantities of data in the form of spreadsheets and or output from ERP systems, et cetera, makes for forecasting and budgeting, improvements. And there's a bunch of different players out there who are doing. I'm just going to show you a quick thing. Here's 7 best AI tools for finance teams in 2023, a self-serving blog entry by Data Rails, which is one of them that offers the very first one. But you can see that there's a bunch of different ones that are out there. Domo is a business intelligence system. It helps the finance team in visualization, is working hard on incorporating AI. So that's an interesting one, and one that I have some familiarity with, having worked largely with business intelligence system Looker. I'm curious to see. I don't have access to Looker anymore because I'm outside the corporate environment, but I'm curious to find out when Looker will incorporate AI to accelerate the ability of business users to have access to the company's financial and sales performance information and create visualizations. That's what Code Interpreter does. You can feed OpenAI's code interpreter vast volumes of data and say, what up? What up with this? And it'll come back with an analysis of that information that's quite sophisticated. Okay, so
AI could be really interesting for forensic accounting when you're trying to track down people diddling the book somewhere.
Indeed, yeah, monitoring and looking for exception reporting and aberrations in the data is an important skill of AI. I'm going to just point out that supply chain has a ton of big iron AIs that are addressing the supply chain area. So this is definitely an area where companies can find the specific vendors who are working with this particular area of finance and accounting and see some advantages. And finally, legal. I'm just going to cite a couple of different applications. The first is contracts. No longer are paralegals and lawyers spending any significant amount of time drafting contracts. Why? Because the large language models do it well or better in many cases, and then you have to review it for hallucination and so on. But contracts are being done now by the legal departments using AI, and there's some big players out there, heavily capitalized, to have done this sort of advanced tuning of the large language models for legal contracts. I'll mention a couple: Case Text and Harvey. Those two are like the big players in legal AI. I'm sure there are players in regulatory and IP and risk management, but I'm not familiar with those sort of niche areas of application. But there are thousands of startups out there looking for those niche applications and refining and tuning AIs to do that sort of thing. So that's the world of administrative management of organizations.
Nice work, Robert. Sorry, Andy. Oh my God.
I'll take the compliment. I didn't do anything.
Great, Robert.
You did a great job at it.
I will say, I never occurred to me that office administration would basically would include the topics that you discussed. It kind of, I just don't compartmentalize it that way. I still think of office admin as, maybe it's because I'm stuck in the 80s, that it's like the greeter at the desk when you go to building. That's the admin or the executive. And I guess I'm
the president of a division, and I had 2 administrative assistants. As of about 2000, I have never had an administrative assistant since then. That has disappeared. The greeter, the administrative assistant, they've been replaced by something. And so a little bit of an anachronism to think of.
Tell that to my last boss, because he had one. We won't get into that. But okay, so yeah, and I think office manager is more in line with kind of a lot of the topics, like that kind of manages the functions of HR, of payroll, of kind of hiring. And there's a little bit of more of an HR role there. I can see that, but yeah, just terminology, I guess. So we got about 7 minutes left. What kind of contributions? What do we want to talk about for the rest of this, and anything that we haven't touched on?
So have any of you guys got any other thoughts on what we looked at?
Well, so I've talked a lot, but I have a question, because the financial thing that Andy put up said that that's what Code Interpreter does. And I have heard, but not verified, is Code Interpreter included with OpenAI's enterprise option?
It is. It's a version of it, but it does allow for that same type of technical analysis. Yep.
So that seems big.
That's huge. Yeah. The enterprise announcement that OpenAI made yesterday is big. You have to go through a salesperson in order to get access to that. And operators are standing by, I'm sure. But the enterprise package, which we can segue into that right now, but that's going to allow them to have data that's not trained. So your data won't be trained by AI. It won't be learned. It won't be housed. You'll have encryption back and forth. It'll have the code interpreter. You'll have a bigger context window, 32,000K token context window. What am I missing, guys?
SOC 2.
Access to the full API. No limits.
No limits for queries. Plugins, admin levels, all sorts of stuff. Yeah.
I think function calling too. So it's going to be obviously who qualifies for enterprise. You know, that's going to be a question that is now we're getting into the realm of, oh, you're giving big companies access to these awesome tools. Now what's going on? That's not fair. Right now, OpenAI was almost like a leveler, right? It brought everybody up. And now we're giving enterprise access. Now I'm a little bit like, come on, guys. Now you're turning into.
That's the world we live in.
I think it's just a bundle, Robert. They're bundling up a bunch of features and services at a certain price, and then they're making that an implementation path. And Jun-Mi and I were talking just before the show, and he's waiting, and I think it's soon coming, the version of this enterprise offering for small and medium businesses. It's going to be there. And it'll be one of the ways that you can access all these things, but you can also, you can do it yourself. I mean, there's 1,000 little entrepreneurial companies that are supporting the implementation of these same features and functions in small business.
Yeah.
Go, Carl.
Carl, what were you going to say?
Completely forgot now.
I'm wondering how is this enterprise level going to impact that, because right now they're trying to move themselves out of just the chat and the API into an actual product. So now they're packaging it, as you said, Andy, and I'm still unsure about the pricing and if you have to be approved. So I understand your point about it being a package, but I don't necessarily think that's quite that simple. They're going to be like, oh, you're not enterprise, you don't get this tool, and you don't get the faster API, you don't get the more complex code interpreter. So I would disagree that it's just a bundling. I think it might be a little bit more access and better tools for those higher paid. I mean, it might be priced high.
Yeah, I think it's a price spectrum. I think
Robert,
that WSI,
go for
it. If you pay enough, you can get into that system.
Yeah. Like I know when I read the announcement, it said that one of the companies that was they were talking to, they mentioned Canva, which is like $1 billion company now, and I'm proud to say was started by a young lady from Perth, where I live. And it's a huge company, so they got lots of employees, lots of money, lots of equipment, yada yada yada. So you can imagine how much they're going to have to pay for that kind of access for the firm, and it'll be the same for all the other big corporates and government departments as well.
Well, that begs the question then. So how does this interrupt the landscape of offerings? How does OpenAI coming out with a product interrupt all those companies that Andy was referring to that have products and solutions and integrations? And then, of course, now they're putting themselves right in between Google and Microsoft. Yeah. Google and Microsoft, they're coming out with their stuff pretty soon. Next 3 to 6 months, they're going to have their own products all embedded in their enterprise level, in their ecosystem that does all the
but remember, things. OpenAI is massively funded by Microsoft, so they're already on that side of the fence anyway.
Yeah, but OpenAI also, ChatGPT loses money, like is losing money.
Yeah, but they're independent now, so they're going to go after the agnostic kind of market share that's not embedded in those two ecosystems. So this is a play for that, and I'm recognizing it, and like it's interrupting those other smaller companies that created solutions on the back of those APIs. Now it's like, you don't need those companies. Again, it's happening already. If you created a company last month, you got funded in seed rounds. Now OpenAI just killed you.
Well, I would mention that when Microsoft made the announcement about their investment in OpenAI and started to build around the Azure system, the integration of OpenAI services. I thought that was a partnership between OpenAI, which originally started out as I think it's a B company or it's a nonprofit, and I thought Azure would be the deliverer of any enterprise services that would be using OpenAI. But this is a surprise to me. The announcement that OpenAI is coming out with an enterprise version seems to be competitive with Azure OpenAI.
Yeah. And they've done that several times. Both Microsoft and OpenAI have done different things, because Microsoft, because to their mission, they have their own version of the language model.
Yeah,
it's what they call it, instance. They have their own instance of OpenAI, so they're doing much different things than OpenAI is. So I'm curious, whenever it does come out that a Copilot and everything is all integrated, I would do a side-by-side test. I guarantee they're gonna have different results because their RLHF is gonna be different. The fine tuning is gonna be different. Yeah.
Yeah. And you can, so the thing is though, does anyone have any access to Duet right now with Google? So their email, their email, their docs, their Google Sheets AI
To help
integration.
me write.
I do, but it sucked so bad. I didn't.
It's terrible. So even you compare it to Bard. I was like, why would I even use this? This is not very good at all. So I'm hoping that, anything that Microsoft comes out with is, from what I've heard from other people who are in the program, that's like, oh, it's really great. But I'm like, I don't know what that means.
Right.
And it could be great for them, but for people who, like, for us who use it regularly, then what does that mean for us? Or will we even be using it?
And is this just a case of, we're already time? Man, I've got so much more to talk about. I just wanted to quickly say, I'm just wondering if this is just a case of first to market. Like
this is going to steal. I love that idea, Jimmy. If Microsoft comes out first, which they kind of have, and they were able to demo it like January 1st or something, I guarantee you're going to have shifts from people leaving the Google ecosystem and going to Microsoft if it can blow people away. Because right now, what you're seeing in Google, as Carl said, is not impressive. So
don't count Google out. They're so big and they have so much behind the curtain.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think they were just forced to release everything a little earlier than
that's right.
Planned.
They got rushed.
Yeah.
They need a better story, right? Like, I mean, their stuff improves. Their stuff improves, but they just release a better version. So you go back to, you're like, wow, this is so much better. Why was this not, where was the story that said check Google out again? All right.
Okay. On that note, like and subscribe.
Okay, no, seriously, like and subscribe.
Seriously. Yeah. No, thank you for listening, everybody.
On LinkedIn and YouTube.
Yep. And we'll see you tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel.
All right. Bye, everybody.